I have here my bench power supply. It's quite a basic unit. I've had it for quite some time now. It came from Germany years ago, from Conrad Electronics. I don't think it's really got a brand name on here. So I want to see if it's got a date underneath. There's nothing obvious. I've looked for date stamps and chips inside, but the reason I've got it open is to take a look at a couple of basic upgrades. Now, on the front here, the output kind of terminals are quite nice, kind of protected and shrouded, recessed kind of banana jacks, 4mm jacks, but they're not binding posts, which is really annoying when you're trying to wire up or quickly test something. You've got to kind of get out kind of test leads to run down, feed up, and so I thought a quick fix might be to switch these out with just a pair of basic binding posts. Picked up a bag of these, just got loaded in kind of red and black. I thought it might be worthwhile seeing if I could switch these out. And so that's the first upgrade I'm looking at. The second upgrade is to the kind of voltage control. This kind of part here. It's pulled this one out already. It's a really crude single turn voltage control, and it's really crap when you're trying to get a kind of trying to hone in on a particular voltage, and it just really is irritating having that, and you can never get anything that detailed. Admittedly, this isn't a particularly great unit anyway, so it probably suits it, but I thought it might be fun to see if I can switch it out with one of these multi-turn pots. This is a 5-turn one, which finally turned up the other day. I got this shipped in from China, just from a seller on Amazon, because it was one of the cheaper sources, but there's still a good couple of quid per unit. And for this, I'm only going to be switching out the voltage control, simply because the current is crude enough or good enough for what I want, and so I'll give that a go. I've dismantled these parts. It's very well built inside and fully shielded. The top kind of pops off, and then this is the front readout panel. That is bolted in there and plugs onto the main board, and I believe then takes power in there. The pots kind of both plug into the board, like so, and power kind of connections down here from there. Now I am now presented with a couple of issues. First off, the hole on the front here is too small for the new kind of pot I want to put in. It doesn't fit, so that'll need to be drilled out. And the holes on the board for the 4mm jacks are too big, and so I'll need to pack that out somehow if I want to replace it. The connection down here is also quite impressive. I'm just going to zoom in a bit. Just about to see. This is so they've got the main kind of power outputs here running through to the terminals, and then you've got kind of voltage sense lines coming back, along with a pair of capacitors on the output as well. And so there's a lot going on these pins, and they've got these metal plates which are being kind of soldered over the top, which give it multiple tabs. This main kind of wire here then runs through one of those tabs and wraps around several times, so it's a real kind of bitch to get out. I'm going to have to cut this now. So I've freed up as many of these as I can, but to finish off the rest, I think I have to cut it a little bit and release one of those. Once I've got this connection out, I can then investigate further and see what's going to be needed to get one of these new terminals in place. It may be a lot more hassle than I really wanted for this, but I've gone this far, so I'm going to remove that now. So after a lot of squeezing, I've got the connector out, or the first connector out anyway. I had to really bend in the kind of prongs of this top plate in order to get it through this metal ring. It was held in place, this kind of just squeezed over and threaded onto there, and that's how it was kind of held into the panel, and so I had to bend everything in place to get that out. The lug on the back of the connector, let's kind of focus there, the lug on the back of the connector has been bonded into that metal plate by the kind of wire, the main output wires all been twisted around. Ideally I'd like to save this kind of metal plate in order to reattach everything, so I'm going to have a go at using kind of solder wick to remove some of this solder here, just to try and salvage it. In terms of the new connectors, the connector in here, it just kind of falls straight through the gap. It is way too small there, you can see. But what I have found, I've got a couple of washers, and this seems to be just about right. So it fits on there quite nicely. I can then mount this through the other side. I have this washer on the front, then put another washer on this side, and finally bolt that in. And that should do a reasonably neat job, actually. Quite lucky with that find. So I'm just going to have a go salvaging these parts here, and then I can practice putting one of these connectors in place, and hopefully it will be successful. So it's a bit fiddly, but that's gone on quite well now. I managed to get the two capacitors back in, the voltage sense line, and the main power output line. That's all kind of bolted through. Just bolted up tight against the washer, and I've got the washer on both sides to secure it in place. And that should do the job. It's kind of wrapping onto this kind of plastic housing. These connectors are cheap. They're not the best of threads, and I was worried if I'd kind of tighten it up too much, I would end up kind of pulling this and ripping this thread out. So what I'm going to do is add some glue. When this is all done, I'll drop a little bit of super glue around this fitting here to try and give it a little more strength, and then maybe even some hot glue on top of that to really lock it down. So I don't want this coming out again. I'm just going to switch over this other connector now and move ahead with fitting the replacement potentiometer. So in the end, removing the solder from these connectors, one of these kind of solder suckers works really well for that. Yeah, they kind of have a mixed luck with these depending on what you're using it for, but it works pretty well. There's enough kind of solder built up around the connector or the pad you can get in and really pull it out. So I finished replacing the second negative connector down here, and that seems to have gone fairly successfully. I've also drilled out the hole big enough to accommodate this larger multi-turn part here. That was slightly annoying kind of getting that out. I didn't really have any particularly big drill bits with me here, so it's just a case of drilling out with what I had and then filing the rest of the way. But that has gone in now, and it's fairly secure. What I'm going to do now is just quickly unsolder this, solder it back onto here, and I can then connect a few things back up and test it. So I've resoldered the new kind of potentiometer in there. The kind of pin layout has changed very slightly. Thankfully it's got a little diagram in there which shows kind of what pin is what. So I've got that correct. It's quite likely I've still got the kind of the two outer ones the wrong way around, so when I turn the volume up it might actually go down, but I think that the easiest way to verify that is just to power it up and see how it's going to run, rather than kind of working out which way around it should be. I think the only thing I've got only disconnected here is this board, which I can just plug back in. I will leave this one off and disconnected for now, just because it limits the range of this front panel. It has to be kind of screwed back in quite tight. I'll leave that somewhere where it's not going to short out anywhere. Plugged into the mains. I don't think I've shorted anything there. The main circuitry in here, see over on this side, is fairly kind of isolated, so it's relatively safe doing this. Okay, the two displays are illuminated. And so I have the voltage control the correct way around, which is a nice touch. So slowly turning up the voltage range here. And I've actually got enough accuracy to choose a specific voltage, and that is working brilliantly, just as I wanted. Keep on going up. This goes up to, I think, 32 volts maximum. So yeah, the full range. It's yeah, slightly better view there, camera. And so if I want exactly 5 volts, that is something I can do now. Okay, 5 volts. It's fairly straight, quick and easy to go to now with this multi-turn. There's no kind of touching it very lightly to get it to kind of just about read that. Who knows if the output is actually 5 volts, but it's I think it's a worthwhile upgrade anyway. I can power that off and bolt this front panel and get the rest of it together now. And obviously I'm going to apply some glue to this front mounting points here just to secure those with these kind of cheap binding posts. So I finished with the upgrades. I've got the new binding post in, which allows me to connect cable directly to it, which is seems such an obvious thing, but it was something I was completely lacking before. And I've got the much more accurate kind of multi-turn pot in here. Sadly this knob, which is originally on there, doesn't quite fit anymore, at least not properly. So I'm going to switch it out with something a little more generic and more suitable that will fit on here. But, I don't have anything with me at the moment, so that will stay blank for now, but it is a nice, easily controllable shaft. So that was pretty straightforward. It was a little more fiddly than I was hoping for, certainly with having to drill out the holes and then pack the holes, but it's all up and running now, so I'm happy.